Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now on the phone is Representative Dana Rohrabacher, Republican from California. Representative Rohrabacher is a senior member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the vice chairman of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And Representative Rohrabacher, thanks for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate you getting the word out.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get to your trip to Russia in just a couple seconds, but first, the UN has come out saying that there are reasonable grounds to believe chemical weapons are being used in Syria. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice just came out saying the U.S. can't sit on the sidelines here, and Senator McCain says, arm the rebels, impose a no-fly zone. What, if anything, should we do about Syria?
We should stay as far away as we possibly can. Absolutely absurd to think the United States has to get involved in every one of these fights everywhere in the world. And the fact is, in Syria, you've got terrorists who are murdering Americans on one side, and you've got the radical mullahs allied with Assad on the other side. Let's stay away from this one.
Is Syria a U.S. national security interest?
No.
How come?
Why should it be?
Well, Israel's defense minister claims that Russia has not yet followed through on plans to ship arms to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Russia says it will follow through on the weapons order from Syria. How does arming the Assad regime shift the balance of power in the region?
It's not our interest in Syria. I mean, I don't care. If Russia gets too involved in it, it's to their detriment, because just like with us, they're wasting their own money and their own resources. But let's put this in perspective. You've got the Assad regime, which is just like Saddam Hussein's regime was, which was a rotten dictatorship. But under Assad, they protect Christians and minority religions. The other group that's trying to throw Assad out would be attacking Christians and attacking minority religious groups. There's no good side here, so we should just stay out. It's not worth our money. It's not worth any lives of our people, that's for sure.
You just came back from leading a delegation to Russia where you met with Russian parliament members and security officials about the Boston terror attack. You've come out saying the attack there could have been prevented. How come, and how do we prevent another Boston?
Well, we can prevent another Boston by recognizing that today the major threats to our country are coming from two sources. One's in the future and is developing. The other is right at our throats right now. And it's radical Islam, which are committing acts of violence and terrorism, and to try to terrorize the Western world, and especially the United States, into retreating as a force in the planet. And then China, which is the up-and-coming threat. And in both of these cases, Russia has the same interest as we do, and we should have, a long time ago, been working with them to build a closer relationship after the fall of communism that by now would have permitted our intelligence sources to be working together to thwart radical Islamic terrorist attacks like the one in Boston against our marathon.
Many in the GOP are skeptical of the Kremlin and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Can we trust Russia as an ally of the U.S.?
You know, I'm not skeptical of Putin. He's a tough guy. And he does reflect what the Russian people want. He was elected. Nobody, I know, doubts that he wouldn't have been elected there. But we have to recognize that they have made tremendous progress since the Cold War. Putin is not the old-line communist trying to reimpose communism, but he is flawed. They've got some repressive measures that need to be addressed. But the churches are open. There are opposition parties. There are demonstrations against the regime. And we need to be working with the Russian government, whoever it is in charge, as long as it's democratically elected, to thwart the radical Islamic terrorists who are attacking both of our people.
I understand that actor Steven Seagal made possible some of the meetings in Russia. Can you tell us what role he played?
Well, I've known Steven for a long time, and we just made acquaintances over the years. And so Stephen, however, in the last few years, has just really taken it to heart about the threat of radical Islamic terrorists who are murdering innocent people throughout the world. And in Russia, they're murdering hundreds. I mean, these insurgencies down in the Caucasus, hundreds of people, non-combatants, are losing their lives, just like at the Boston Marathon, where hundreds of people were wounded and 3 people were killed, and some of these lives will never be the same. And radical Islamic terrorism is a threat. Steven Seagal felt that, and like me, he realized that Russia should be a positive player that we should be working with to defeat that evil threat.
Mm-hmm. The Islamic insurgency, do President Obama's policies adequately address that threat in your view?
I know, and however, but I'm not going to blame just Obama for this. I think George Bush's administration was very has to share the blame in the status quo as well. I mean, for example, we went down to Beslan, where this school in North Ossetia was taken over by the radical Muslim terrorist Chechens who came in there, and hundreds of these young kids were blown apart. And the terrorists, while they were holding them hostage, wouldn't permit water to go into the school. We went down there to that school, and these parents are still delivering bottles of water every day to that school because they had out of memory of their children who they couldn't get water to when they were being held by those terrorists. And the picture of those kids, it reminded me of the little kid who was sitting there on the street watching the Boston Marathon, and this Chechen nutcase radical terrorist ends up putting his bomb right behind the kid, knowing it would murder him. And that's what we're up against, people who will murder children, intentionally murder children, and both the Russians and the Americans should be working together on it because we're both targeted.
Let's switch gears real quickly and talk about Turkey. Anti-government unrest there has some questioning whether Prime Minister Erdogan will be able to hold on to power there. He's blaming extremists for the riots and says that this is no Turkish Spring. How concerned are you, though, that this unrest could destabilize Turkey, a known ally of the U.S., and potentially lead to a dramatic power shift in the region in favor of Islamists?
You know, I've been in Russia now. I just got back last night for the last week, and I have not been able to receive the briefings I need to adequately comment on Turkey. But I will say that Turkey, up until this point, has shown that you can have Islam and democracy working side by side. But if these demonstrations end up fostering a more radical form of Islam that replaces this current more very reasonable, responsible way for Muslims to be involved in government, I would be it would be alarming, and would actually have to go into our equation as to what we think about just Muslims, radical Muslims getting involved in government.
Last question for you, Congressman. Yesterday, President Obama issued an executive order tightening sanctions on Iran. This new action targets Iran's currency, the rial, by authorizing the imposition of sanctions on foreign financial institutions that knowingly conduct or facilitate significant transactions for the purchase or sale of the rial. Are these sanctions having their intended effect of curbing Iran's nuclear program? And at what point does the U.S. need to get tougher?
Well, I think we should have been tougher all along. And although these sanctions, ratcheting up the economic sanctions is certainly a positive step in the right direction that should have been done a long time ago. And on top of that, when you ask me about should we have been helping the anti-Assad forces, we should be helping the people in Iran overthrow the Mullah regime. Forget Assad, that's not our national interest, but certainly getting rid of this Mullah regime that has basically declared jihad against the United States. We need to support those elements inside Iran, like the Baluchis who are down in their south, or the Azaris in the north, or the Kurds, the Turkmen. You've got a lot of groups in Iran that would with a little bit of help from us, could have gotten rid of the mullahs a long time ago, and thus eliminated this whole nuclear threat that the mullahs will end up with a nuclear bomb.
All right, Representative Dana Rohrabacher, Republican from California, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.